thank you for your patience and video skipping willingness. So cruciferous vegetables, no matter what type you like the best, definitely make sure that you're eating them on a regular basis, since they are one of the most commonly mentioned veggies or fruits or food, how not to die. So they're just so good for you, and they have so many great effects, like increasing liver detoxification, like preventing cancer spread and growth and initiation. So definitely make sure that you get them in there. And they also boost immunity. That's the other thing. They seem to trigger your immune system to respond to the food you eat. So it's so important that you get them in your diet regularly. Like I was saying, some of my favorites: kale, cabbage. I like bok choy in my stir fries. Collard greens I tend to use for salads. I know it sounds kind of weird because they're so tough, but like a nice vinegary salad dressing with the collard greens I really love. I also like using the collards in soups. What else do I eat? I make my own mustard, as you guys probably saw in the video. So I use that a lot as well. And Dr. Greger, he talks a lot about sulforaphane in this chapter, and sulforaphane has gotten a lot of airtime over the last several years. It's become a big superfood, so much so that there is now, of course, a supplement company. Several supplement companies who put out supplements of just straight up sulforaphane, and as Dr. Greger mentioned, like, the supplements don't appear to actually work or have the positive beneficial effect that sulforaphane that's found in foods has. So it is important to not skip your broccoli or your kale or your cabbage consumption thinking that you can get the same benefits from a supplement, because you just can't. So sulforaphane, he has a quote about it on page 305. He says, "Beyond being a promising anti-cancer agent, sulforaphane may also help protect your brain and your eyesight, reduce nasal allergy inflammation, manage type 2 diabetes, and was recently found to successfully help treat autism. A placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized trial of boys with autism found that about 2 or 3 cruciferous vegetable servings worth of sulforaphane a day improves social interaction, abnormal behavior, and verbal communication within a matter of weeks. The researchers, primarily from Harvard University and Johns Hopkins University, suggest that the effect might be due to sulforaphane's role as a detoxicant." So that's some pretty powerful stuff. And I know that there's so much controversy over autism and the causes of it, the potential causes of it. I did read a really interesting book 2 or 3 years ago. It's called The 4 A's. I can't remember the exact title. I should have looked it up. But they were talking about autism, asthma, and then a lot of skin allergies and other allergies. And they were talking about how they're all linked. And that author, while he didn't recommend a plant-based diet, he did say that you really needed to increase the kids' fiber intake, because they noticed that most of the kids dealing with those issues were chronically constipated, and that if you could increase the fiber intake and get them using the bathroom regularly and kind of clearing them out, that a lot of their symptoms could be alleviated. Oh God. The video's like sputtering, and I'm like, I know I'm gonna freeze. I'm gonna try not to freeze, you guys. Try not to freeze. So, sulforaphane does appear to be so important. So we gotta make sure that it's actually activated, because Dr. Greger talks about how sulforaphane needs to be activated with that precursor. The precursor of sulforaphane needs to be activated with the enzyme myrosinase. Just depends how you want to pronounce it, I guess. And I know that those fancy science people have their own way. Jory Justice says, "So many things related to autism, it makes me scared to have a kid." I feel you. I definitely, when I was reflecting on whether or not I wanted to have kids, specifically, well, most of my life I've done that, but specifically before I got the surgery that would render me free for the rest of my life and sterile. I was thinking, you know, maybe under the best case scenarios, I would be okay with having a kid, or it would go well, like with a great supportive partner, with a healthy kid, and then doing more research about birth defects and thinking about my own health issues that I've dealt with. I was like, that's like one hell of a risk. And I understand that a lot of people want to be parents so badly that it's worth it, and there are so many parents who then have children who do have issues and then have to deal with them, and they deal with them as best as they can, and I'm so impressed with their ability to cope with and that, even though I can imagine how difficult it is. But I knew that, like, I wouldn't be one of those parents who would deal with it well, you know? So it's definitely something to think about when you are considering making children, right? So as far as activating sulforaphane goes, you got to mix the precursor with the myrosinase. Ketter, please don't lick yourself right next to the microphone. Thank you. You got to activate it. So you have to chew raw cruciferous vegetables. You got to like chew them and eat them raw, or you have to pre-cut them, because when the cruciferous veggie is cut, that's when these enzymes get activated and the sulforaphane starts being created. So as Dr. Greger mentioned, you know, you can cut them and either wait 40 minutes, which I find kind of inconvenient, or you can just eat your cruciferous veggies raw, or you can cook your cruciferous veggies without waiting and then add back in some of that enzyme after they're already cooked. And I find that part of it so cool, because I'm not a person that can like pre-chop my cruciferous greens in advance and deal with that. And I'm definitely one of those people who prefers frozen broccoli over fresh broccoli, just because of the cost and the preparation time. So it's really good that if I do have frozen broccoli or something, or if I cook my greens, I can just either chop up a little bit of red cabbage and use it as a garnish, or I can use my mustard, or I can use some wasabi or horseradish or whatever, and it reactivates that. Or broccoli sprouts. Just throw some of those guys on top, and it'll help to reactivate it so that the sulforaphane continues to be created in my body. There is one thing that I wanted to mention, since this chapter is about cruciferous veggies. And ironically, hold on, I'll hold that thought. Equivocal Truth says, so does chopping broccoli into florets count, or do they need to dice those babies really tiny? That's a really good question. I would assume that the enzymatic reaction would only happen in places where it was chopped, right? So it makes sense to me that you would have to chop it either fairly finely in order for that to happen, or like if I was chopping up fresh broccoli, what I do is I cut off the florets and then I would cut them in half, so you get a long chop going all the way up and down the broccoli stem, and cut them in half or in quarters or something like that. And then if and when you cook them, just cook them really fast, because they'll cook very quickly at that point. So that's what I would think. But I'm not Dr. Greger. Hi, Britt. I'm glad you made it to the live stream. All right. Yeah, what I wanted to mention was cruciferous veggies. Ironically, they get kind of a bad rap within the natural health community. It's so often that I talk to a naturopath or someone who's into Ayurveda, or someone who's just read maybe one too many blogs, and you say something about eating broccoli or soy, and they say, "Oh no, I can't eat cruciferous vegetables. Like, I don't eat broccoli and I don't eat kale because they depress my thyroid function." And I don't think the hypothyroid epidemic that is sweeping the Western world is happening because too many people ate vegetables. Like, I don't think that's what's happening here. And then I remember that article that came out a few years ago. It was in the New York Times or something, and this lady was talking about how her healthy diet ruined her health. You know, she said that she eroded all of the enamel on her teeth from sipping lemon water all day long, and she gave herself hypothyroid from eating kale all day long. And I'll say a few things about that. First, like, cruciferous vegetables appear to be one of the healthiest human foods available. You know, don't avoid them. The other thing is you don't have to eat them every single day. I mean, I've been eating them every single day for a couple of years now. Ever since I read How Not to Die, I really got more serious about regular cruciferous veggie consumption. But you don't have to eat it every day if you don't want to. And the issue with hypothyroidism being caused by cruciferous vegetables only exists if you are deficient in iodine and not eating enough dietary iodine. So as long as you make sure that you're eating enough iodine, I usually get mine from sea vegetables. I made a video about it. You might have seen it. As long as you're eating enough iodine, you're fine. Eat cruciferous veggies, eat broccoli, kale, cabbage, eat soy foods. It's the same thing. It's only an issue if you're deficient in iodine, which will make you hypothyroid anyway, right? Okay. So no one needs to freak out about the cruciferous veggies. All right. Oh, Sarah, I'm so glad you're catching me live, too. Demon says, one of the teachers at school has a mug that says, don't confuse your use of Google with my history degree. That's good. I think that could go a lot of ways. Like, don't... Although I say that and, like, I don't have a nutrition degree. But then I speak about these topics. But I'm also very careful about where I source the advice that I then carry through to other people. But yes, one too many. I mean, I feel like you search things now, especially health topics, and you type it in, and you just get all of these blogs who just wrote the article just so they could get clicks. It's not because they know anything about it. It's not because they've done their own research. Generally speaking, you just see these blogs like regurgitating the same 1 to 3 factoids from each other. No one's fact checking it. No one knows where the original study came from. And not only does it worry me a little bit for just people's ability to have access to good information, but it's not helping us, and it's flooding the internet and flooding our brains with so much extra information just so people can make money off of clicks and selling supplements, right? Kelly says the facts they were sent the facts they were sent by someone that's profiting from the blog articles. Yeah, and it's really just a matter of putting out a ton of content, not necessarily good content. That's where the money is nowadays. She just put out a ton of content to try to attract as many confused people as possible, try to link those confused people to ads or sponsored products that are on your website, and try to get as much like advertising revenue from that as possible. That's, I mean, just from researching online business models nowadays, I'm very unimpressed. Yeah. Equivocal Truth says, any uses for limp broccoli? Ah, you left your broccoli in the fridge a little too long, did ya? Yeah. Coral says stir fry would be a great idea. Kelly says soup. I think either of those would be great. Dr. Greger does mention that if you're going to make broccoli soup, you can blend it first and then cook it, although that sounds kind of gross to me, but I haven't tried it, so I don't know. But a stir fry definitely does sound appealing. I just got a bunch of bok choy, and that's usually my stir-fry go-to. Okie dokie. So, the one other thing that I did want to mention was that, like, with the broccoli sprouts, and this is something that I would love to get your guys' opinions on, too. He mentions that it's 48 hours after you soak the broccoli sprouts, and you dump off that water. So 48 hours after you dump out that water, that's when the sulforaphane content in the sprouts peaks. So these are about 3 days old. So I guess, what is that, 72 hours? Yeah. These are a little bit older than they should be for peak sulforaphane. We did eat some last night, so these are just what's left over in the jar. And that's one of those things where I don't want to eat them when they're that much younger, you know, because they're still really crunchy and they're not all green and pretty. But what do you guys do? What do you prefer as far as the broccoli sprouts go? Are you really trying to, like, peak your sulforaphane intake, or are you doing it more for palatability? And I would love to see what the content is when they're 3 days old, you know, just to see. I will check in the comments section with you guys. All right. Oh, nice. Equivocal Truth says, I bought reusable cloth produce bags. That's a great idea. But she says they don't keep greens very well. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I have a series of big plastic bags that I've just randomly collected over the months and years, and what I do is I do my shop or I get my veggie delivery, and I get everything not in plastic. I'll try to do it in the cloth produce bags or something like that. But then when I bring them home, I transfer them into the plastic bags just so that they last a little bit longer, yeah? Anna says, can I ask an unrelated question? How can I wash out turmeric stains? Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure it's possible. Sorry, there's a helicopter going over my house. I don't know if you can hear it. When I was in culinary school, we were cooking with turmeric, and then the container of turmeric fell over and exploded all over me. And I think I just bleached the crap out of my chef whites, and that took it out. I might have had to soak it in bleach for a while. But I've noticed that just, you know, little turmeric stains or something that I get on my clothes, they just don't come out. And so one option, and I know that Hawaiians used to use turmeric, or olena as they call it, they used to use it as a dye. So what you could do is just grate up a bunch of turmeric into a bucket or something and then soak the article of clothing in it and just make it turmeric colored. But I haven't heard much success about that. Okay. Dina says, I haven't been able to motivate myself to sprout the broccolis. I just buy them sometimes. Yeah, that's obviously an option. I think when you do buy them, they would be kind of more this stage or older, where they are past peak sulforaphane levels. But again, it's just, why are you eating them? I'm kind of the opinion that I don't really like sprouts in the first place, so I wouldn't eat them just because I enjoy it. I'm eating them because of the sulforaphane, so I guess I should just eat them when it's highest, you know, otherwise, why bother, right? Equivocal Truth says, peroxide helps remove turmeric from hard surfaces or substances. Would probably bleach cloth, though. Sunlight is also helpful for things like your Vitamix jug. Oh, that's a good idea. Leave the Vitamix jug out in the sun for a little while and help bleach that out. That's a good idea. Mine's just hopelessly orange. Sasha says, I had no idea you can sprout broccoli. Yeah, I buy my broccoli sprouts. I get organic broccoli sprouts from the Sprout House on Amazon, and they've been a-okay. Coral says, I don't sprout enough. I need to start doing it again. I don't think I'd be able to eat them at 48 hours. Would they not be super bitter? I feel like I'd go for palatability over nutrient value. Yeah, I think they are a little bit bitter, but it's probably that bitterness that's so good about them, right? Megan says, I'm not sprouting things yet. I'll get there one day. Megan, I was like that for a long time. I was thinking, oh no, it's too much hassle. It's too much hassle. You have to like rinse them all the time and whatever. But sprouting has been so much easier than I thought it would be. My most common ones, I sprout lentils and I sprout a lot of broccoli. So that's what I've been doing. Kelly says, I remember you mentioned this before. I think if you're eating them as a preventative, eat them when you like them best. If you're eating them as a treatment, then eat them at peak. Oh, that's a really good way of thinking of it. Like, you know, as long as we're not treating an acute issue, like if you were dealing with cancer or some other issue, then definitely eat them as medicine and eat them at 48 hours. But if you just want to eat them to enjoy broccoli sprouts or have a healthy diet in general, then eat them when you like them. All right. Dan says, does anyone know of other sources of iodine? I live in Ohio, and the closest thing to sea vegetables we have here is blue-green algae on Lake Erie. Ew. I understand that. I mean, the sea veggies that I buy, I think they're from the Atlantic, so they're like... they're getting shipped around. My guess is you could find whatever type of sea veggie you wanted online and then just have it delivered straight to your door in Ohio. Presuming they do deliveries in Ohio. I've never actually been. Sorry, I was just being a dick. But that's like my go-to source just because it is high and it's consistent. I like the dulse flakes the best, and I just sprinkle them on my food. Otherwise, like iodized salt has iodine in it. You could do a very small amount of an iodine supplement. Just make sure you're not getting over 150 micrograms per day is what's usually recommended. But I would advise against the blue-green algae on Lake Erie. Amber says, is there any nori at the grocery store? I get mine from Stop and Shop in the ethnic food aisle. Very nice. Yeah, we get, they have like tons of nori here at Target and Safeway, and it's pretty much everywhere because Japanese culture is so prominent in Hawaii, so that is helpful. All right. Taylor says, if you have a health food store, they should carry nori and dulse. Yeah, I also, I got... 1 pound bag of, was it granulated kelp? Something like that, like very, very finely ground kelp. And I have it in our emergency supply kit right now, but I was thinking about opening it up, and kelp is so high in iodine that it's really easy to overdo it. But literally just taking a little pinch and putting it on my food, I thought might be a good way to get iodine consistently, since I don't want to eat dulse flakes every single day, so we'll figure it out. It's not something that I'm super worried about, but you never know. Okay, ooh, lots of seaweed conversations. Anna, who has apparently been processing some turmeric, says, my fingers look like I have jaundice. Yeah, if you get turmeric on your skin, it's a matter of exfoliation and time. It just takes time. Oh, man. Anna says persimmons have a ton of iodine. I haven't heard that, but that is definitely something to look into. Thank you for sharing. Dima says, I've done turmeric face masks without issue. Okay, I'm going to have to ask you about that, because I've seen some of those turmeric face masks. And the ones that are sold commercially, generally speaking, they have chickpea flour or some kind of carrier in them. And I was thinking maybe that would prevent it from getting into your skin. Because every time I've touched my skin with turmeric, it has turned into a problem. Like a big problem. So, all right. Let's see here. Megan says, Dan, you could buy seaweed snacks from Walmart and Target. Annie Chung's is a good brand. That's good. Dan, no, the seaweed is not refrigerated. It's just dry, so it's totally shelf stable. They can be sent all over the world. fairly cheap shipping too because they're so light. Yeah. Thanks for answering that, Kelly. Lucy says, I don't know you, but you have nice shoulders. Thanks. My big shoulders have always been a source of pride and self-loathing. Jennifer says, to the person in Ohio, if you are near Cleveland, there are many Asian markets where you can get cheap sea vegetables. In Columbus, there is a great Japanese market where you can get all kinds. Ooh, thank you for sharing that, Jennifer. Okie dokie. All right. Well, do you guys have anything else that you would like to add about the cruciferous vegetables before we move on? I know that, I mean, reading this book in general, I got so motivated to eat more, and I definitely added more cruciferous veggies to my diet. I added more vegetables in general, and I added more flax seeds and turmeric to my diet after reading How Not to Die for the first time. And I have to say, I noticed such a nice bump in my health and well-being and just general vitality, so I cannot suggest it enough. Okay. Okay, we're going back to the turmeric, yeah. Purely Soul by Coral says, I've heard turmeric is a good teeth whitener, but I can't imagine it doing anything other than turning your teeth neon orange. I heard that too, and I heard it from, one, someone who grows turmeric, and two, their teeth were not white. So, I have not been brave enough to try it on my own teeth, just because I finally got to a point where my teeth are fairly white, and they look blindingly white in this light. But yeah, I personally wouldn't use that for that purpose. And I will say, little teaser alert, despite all of the stress of the last few weeks, I did manage to find some time to make my own toothpaste, and I have been loving it, and my teeth have been loving it too. So once I go in for my next checkup at the dentist and they make sure that I'm not eroding my enamel down to little nubs, I will share that recipe with you guys. Okay. Dima says, yeah, Lily, maybe it just needs some kind of carrier. That's how I've always made mine, with clay or chickpea flour without any issue. There might be a little yellowness from residue, but that's it. That's good to know. She's talking about the turmeric face masks. There's like a carrier that you use, so either chickpea flour, she says that she uses a clay. I would think that would be like a bentonite clay or something like that. So thank you for sharing that on your techniques. I know maybe I should get some turmeric on my face. All right. I like that you also are afraid of the word veggies. I prefer to say vegetables too. Oh, I say veggies all the time. Why do you not like veggies, Taylor? Is that like it feels silly? Do you want vegetables? It sounds like more mature and cosmopolitan. Amber says, I got some flax meal and I have it in my breakfast now. Woohoo! Equivocal Truth also got really inspired from reading How Not to Die. She is eating so much better, willingly, after reading it. That's awesome. All right. Elizabeth says, does turmeric irritate anyone else's stomach? That's a good question. It's never irritated mine. I'm not sure what you mean by irritation, but I do know that, you know, obviously there are common foods that have turmeric in them, that are made from turmeric, such as curries, which tend to have the hot peppers in them. The other thing that I will say is that if I use black pepper to encourage turmeric or curcumin absorption, then that can irritate my stomach, especially if I eat it with a smoothie. Like if I put cracked black pepper in my smoothie, things can get a little bit funky, but my stomach has kind of gotten used to that, so yeah. Oh, everybody's really excited about the toothpaste. I will definitely be doing a video on that, because it's fun, and my teeth feel so good. Like, they're so clean. They're so clean. Oh, Amber says she makes her toothpaste, but she would love a new recipe. Yeah, I wanted one that didn't use coconut oil and didn't use glycerin, So I made a water-based one, which meant that I had to get a little particular about the recipe to, prevent bacteria growth and stuff. So I feel like it's a good recipe, and I will definitely be sharing it with you guys. So I'm glad you'll be excited for it. All right. Chocolate is me fave says, I'm gonna skip broccoli and just eat kale. That's where I'm at, just because I love broccoli. I love frozen broccoli, especially, and like broccoli and a curry is so good. But I just can't afford fresh broccoli florets here. It's $3 or $4 a pound, and then each floret is at least a pound or two, and I just can't go there. It's too much for me. So I stick to my kale, which will segue us perfectly into greens. The chapter on greens. How do we get our greens? So he starts by saying that only 1 in 25 people get 12 servings of greens per month. I'm not sure if that includes iceberg lettuce. If it does, I'm appalled. I know that when I was growing up, it was very rare that we would have salads. It was rare. I mean, sometimes I would have sauteed spinach or something, but I thought it was gross, and I did not enjoy it. In the South, very rarely we would have some collard greens, but it would, be cooked with ham and not a good look. Other than that, I don't remember seeing greens until I was in my late teens and tried to get a little bit healthier. When I was 19, I was 19, I took a train trip all around the United States. It was back when Amtrak had a ticket. It was a monthly unlimited ticket. It was like $1,000 or something, and then you could ride the train as much as you wanted to for an entire month. And I crisscrossed the country 2 or 3 times. It was so much fun. But it was a lot of time on trains, and there was not a good selection of food on that train, so I had to bring all of my food with me, which was good that you were allowed to bring a lot of baggage, because a lot of my baggage was food. And one of my favorites were those Wasa, essentially cardboard crackers, and I would spread it with peanut butter and then slap a whole leaf of kale on it and eat it like that. And I just lived off those things. It was good. It was pretty good. Taylor says, I feel like kale is more flexible too. You can hide it well. If you have the kiddos. Yeah, there's nothing like finely chopped kale thrown into like a spaghetti sauce or something. And then you can just sit back and laugh while they eat cruciferous vegetables. Toastwig says, I love broccoli. I hated kale until I realized it tastes like the leaf version of broccoli, and now I love kale. There you go. Jennifer says, salad in my family when I was a kid was iceberg lettuce drowned in an ocean of Italian dressing. We were a ranch dressing kind of family, but yeah. Dima says, the salads at our school lunch are dinky and pathetic, particularly when next to a bacon cheeseburger. Yeah, that is pretty cringeworthy. I feel bad, and kids, the girls, when they come over here, it's like, I'm just straight with them now. I'm like, look, girls, I care too much about you to allow you to not eat those vegetables, so you're gonna eat them. And now they're okay with it. Nia says, I literally yelled, what? When you said in a month about the serving size of greens. I can't even imagine that. It's not a life. You're right, it's not a life. It's so sad. I remember when I read that the average American eats 0.05 pounds of kale per year, and it's like, that's just accidental intake, It's like you ate it and then you realized that it was the garnish and spit it out, and that's how much kale you ended up getting, and it's just not cool. Just not cool. Nina says, my grocery store just started stocking big bags of baby spinach and kale for $2 a pop, and it makes it so budget-friendly to get my greens in now. That's really cool. That's really nice, yeah. It's convenient when greens are convenient. Nina says, I would have laughed in your face 2 years ago if you told me I'd be excited to get budget-friendly greens. Yeah. Dan says, are the girls vegan? Just curious. They are vegan on the weekends with us, and then they kind of eat whatever their moms feed them back at home. And then once they're older, you know, we talk about it with them sometimes, but I try not to expose them to too much. Like, no graphic stuff about veganism. I try not to guilt them or make them feel badly about the food that they eat when they're at their mom's house. So, they're not, and that might be a choice that they make when they're older. It totally depends. I know that Levi's oldest girl their household is going more towards veganism. You know, they switched to almond milk, and they're having oatmeal and fruits in the morning for breakfast, and they're eating lots of vegetables, and they're cooking almost every night now, so that's great. That's really encouraging. And vegetable consumption should always be prioritized. All right. So, something that got me really jonesed about the greens was that, you know, they're green, and obviously green stuff is healthy for you and whatever, but they're full of the other colors too. And I loved it when Dr. Greger talked about that, how greens, you know, it's like they're not just greens, they're also orange and they're a little bit red, but the green color really overpowers everything else. So you get so many nutrients from greens that you can get from other vegetables too, but it's so concentrated in the greens that it really makes them so incredibly healthy for us. And I see some questions about my favorite salad dressings. I have several. I'm planning to make a video about it, similar to the smoothie video that I made. It's just been a matter of not pulling my hair out the last month. Oh, and I know last week I mentioned my car. All the brake warning lights went off. They finally got time to look at it, and it's because a rat chewed through a cord on my left tire, the speed sensor, and $700 later, they're going to change the sensor for me. So that's just great. It's just great. Okay. Something else that I really geeked out on about, rats, Hawaii, for sure. Good God. Something else that I really geeked out on about the greens was the that little part about the coenzyme Q10, and that started in the little gray box on page 313. And this really inspired me to start one of my new favorite morning routines, which is to have like a big green smoothie or something else that contains plenty of chlorophyll, and then I go to the beach and I lay out in the sun from, you know, maybe 9 to 10 o'clock and just get some sunshine all over my body. And when that sunshine goes through your skin and interacts with the chlorophyll in your blood, it actually helps to activate coenzyme Q10, which is a really potent antioxidant. That's why there are so many supplements of it. And it makes me feel even so much better about laying out in the sun for a little while, you know, responsible sun exposure, not getting too much, not getting it at the really intense times of day. Just making sure that you're getting a little bit. It's so good for you. It feels so good. And I know that when I do it, I definitely feel in the beginning, you know, I'll be out in the sunshine and it feels energizing and cleansing and delicious. And then there's a definite line where then the sun exposure starts feeling exhausting and taxing and draining, and it stops feeling good on my skin. And I've gotten pretty good at getting out of the sun before it turns into that. Yeah. What's a VGAM? Okay. Checking in with you guys. Chromatography in the different colors. Oh, Amber says you can see the different colors in the greens when you do the chromatography. The different colors separate. It's really cool. That's awesome. I would love to do chromatography with you one day, Amber. We should get together and do that. A Beautiful Life says, I eat randomly. Just let the subconscious decide what I hunger for. Meat is no issue for me, with or without. But the issue is the lousy quality recipes of vegan restaurants. I would cook finer home. Then cook at home. That sounds like a great idea. Dan says, lol, the rat didn't realize what he was doing. He was doing that to a vegan, otherwise he would have chewed someone else's wires, right? I'm not sure. Those rats really drive me crazy. It's just like a constant, it's a constant problem here. Constant rats, and you hear them crawling around outside, and they used to come inside before we had good doors, and when we had holes in the floor, freaking rats would come in and make messes and knock things over and chew through wires and other shit, and they still go in Levi's cousin's room because he never finished his house properly, and it's just a mess. Can't stand them. Anyway. Sarah says, you need to do a retreat. I would be there in a heartbeat. Oh, that would... I mean, I go back and forth because I'm like, ooh, yeah, it would be fun to hang out with people and meet you guys and, cook for and with you guys. But at the same point in time, I struggle with charging people money for stuff like that. I feel like they're generally speaking so overpriced. And then lots of big promises are made about retreats and transformation and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure we can figure out a way to do it so that everyone feels like they came to the retreat with their integrity. All right? All right. F&A says, you mentioned in a video some time ago that we should cycle our greens, but I've read mixed information on the necessity of this. That's a very good question. I'll get to that in just 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so the cycling of the greens, I think I mentioned that in the Lifestyle Basics video. I mostly included that because people get so into their routines of eating the same food every single day. So I've talked to so many people who only eat kale, and that's the only green that they eat. Green kale. I've talked to people who only eat spinach, and they eat either spinach every single day or a phenomenal amount of spinach. And we need to be a little bit more aware, okay? We need to be a little bit, have a nicer variety, and in the vegetables chapter, we get more into the variety issue with veggies. But I mostly say that just to get people thinking about, okay, am I eating the same thing every single day? Could there be an issue with the foods that I'm eating? Like, we mentioned with cruciferous veggies such as kale or collards. If you're eating them every single day and you're not getting enough iodine, that could aggravate your thyroid just enough to push you into a little bit of hypothyroid, right? Especially if you're not getting enough iodine. And so I would just rather remind people and try to prevent them from getting stuck into ruts, which may or may not have consequences. I certainly don't think it needs to be something that we're really pedantic or obsessed about, but letting people know that they won't be served by eating the exact same thing every single day, right? I hope that makes sense. Maisie says, I really like eating the same foods every week, then cycle each week. Yeah, that works totally fine too. Like if you find a really great deal on spinach one week, definitely, I stock up and then I'm eating tons of spinach like every day for over a week. The next week, I probably don't eat so much. It's just what it is. Okay. Sarah says, okay, no retreat, just a place to come visit and learn your ways of cooking. We could do that. Kelly says, don't call it a retreat, just call it a party with a few activities about cooking and stuff. That sounds much more doable. Oh, Amber, I'm so glad you made it, and I hope you enjoyed your yoga class. All right. Anna says, how do you cook/blend with your Swiss chard? I don't use Swiss chard regularly. I do remember when I used to make green smoothies out of it, it was very stringy and it could get caught up, and then when you cook it, it just purges its water and gets kind of gross. I used to eat it raw sometimes, although it does have such a strong taste. I used to eat it raw sometimes. I would make veggie wraps, and I would use a collard leaf on the outside, and then a Swiss chard leaf on the inside, and then stuff it. You could stuff it with burrito ingredients. You could stuff it with green salad. You could stuff it with a vinegary-based cabbage salad. You could do anything with it like that. But I'm not big on the Swiss chard anymore just because it is such an intense taste. Amber says, I eat spinach and kale for my leafy greens, but also broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus. I do eat the same things a lot, though. Yeah, we can just do the vegetables section kind of at the same time, but Dr. Greger talks so much about variety and how important variety is, and I feel you, like, I prefer to get into my ruts of what I eat or I don't eat and kind of stick with that. Again, it's one of those things, get 5 or 6 varieties of vegetables that you really love and stick with that. Mix it up occasionally if you can, if it's convenient for you. It's not something that you need to obsess about. I would more encourage you to be excited about exploring new things sometimes and not feel so much pressure. Whoop. Come on, there we are. A Beautiful Life, again with the positivity, says, you look healthy but starving. How do you feel? How do I feel really? I feel fine. I feel like over the last month, eating is the only thing that I've continued to do really well. Everything else has been falling apart, but I'm fine. Thanks for asking, and for the sideways put down. I really appreciate that. Amber, I'm glad you enjoyed your yoga class. Madeline says, Swiss chard is good in soup and spaghetti sauce. Oh, that's where it's at. That sounds really good. Jennifer says, this is a little unrelated, but any plans, Lily, for more sexy tablespoon videos? Recipe videos are very, very labor intensive, so it also requires everyone in the house and on the block to be quiet at the same time, which can be difficult. And Levi just doesn't enjoy being in videos, which is something I feel like he struggled to say or even admit to himself, but he just doesn't seem to enjoy them at all. It seems to really stress him out, and then I get stressed out because he's stressed out, and I'm like, I don't want to make you do things, and it just turns into a mess. So I'm not sure. Okay. Maisie says, my favorite green right now is arugula. Whew. Oh, Amber agrees she likes arugula. Anna, I love arugula. I don't know, man. Oh, we got more love for the arugula. I'm not a big arugula fan. It's just too much spice, you know? Dima says, anyone who's seen Lily's What I Eat in a Day videos know this woman is not starving. Yeah, I'm okay. Like, part of me kind of feels like I should stop eating 5-pound bowls for dinner, but I just can't. It's too good, and I feel great, and I lost all the weight I wanted to, so it works. Sarah says, oh, that's sad about Levi, I assume, because he's so freaking funny. Yeah, he is a funny little bugger, but he's just, like, he's so shy that he struggles. He struggles being on, you know? I don't know how much I want to get into the starving comment, but she says if your whole face has muscular seams, I don't know what that word is, moving, I'd say that the person is starving. There's not a drop of fat at all. I mean, I definitely beg to differ about the drops of fat. Like, I'm not a super lean person. I do have very defined jawline, and then that tendon. It's very defined. When I am skinny, the cheekbones stick out a lot, you know, and I'm not super skinny right now. I think we can all tell from looking at my body that I'm not super skinny. I will say what I have been doing. You just hold on one second. Okay. And I was going to talk about this in a favorites video, but I don't mind taking a little time since we're kind of more chill with the book club today. But this is my jaws size because I have some TMJ syndrome issues. So I do this. And then work out your... It always makes me gag too, but I've been doing that to try to exercise the muscles of my jaw and to get my jaw better aligned because my whole jaw is crooked and it ends up causing me quite a bit of headaches and some issues with my neck. So this has been really helpful, and it's definitely, I mean, I don't feel like it's made a huge difference in my jawline, but I've always had this. I've always just had very defined cheekbones, and then this muscle has always stuck out plenty. So I guess that's what's going on there. I would speak to making assumptions about people when you're not aware of the facts. You know, if you watch any of my videos where you see my body, I'm obviously not starving. If you watch me eat my meals, I'm obviously not starving. I've talked quite a bit about eating disorder issues, and I'm obviously not starving. And when people come and they say comments like that, you know, I'm perfectly capable of hearing those comments and not internalizing anything about myself, but not everyone is at a point in their lives or their journey where that's something that they can endure. And I would just suggest be kinder about the way that you communicate with people, you know, just pointing out my facial muscles right now and saying that it makes me look like I'm starving is not a nice thing to say. It's not a nice way to treat another human being. So that's where we're at there. Okay. The jaws are size. They say it's really cool. Yeah, some guy who lives in Maui, he made them. And this is like the medium one. There's one that's a little bit easier to compress, but I don't find this one difficult at all. Again, I'm a person who eats a lot of salad and chews a lot, so my jaw was already fairly strong, but, you know, it is what it is. Evelyn says the TMJ thing is so interesting. I'm a hygienist and hadn't heard of doing that. I'll look into it. They definitely, on the website, I think it advised, you know, if you have TMJ issues, maybe don't use this, but I got it specifically for the temporomandibular joint syndrome issues that I have that started because of bad dental work. I had a dentist rest their hand on my jaw like that while they were doing a filling, and he overnumbed my face, and it just injured my jaw.